The lock had not been opened since 2003. The woman opening it had been married 38 years, divorced for 11 days, and looked, to any neighbor watching from across Vine Street, exactly like a woman who had lost her mind. That was the point. She stood in the cold air of the second Sunday of November, turning a key in a padlock that had rusted the color of dried blood. The chain resisted, then gave way with a heavy clank, leaving a smear of bright orange on the sleeve of her heavy wool coat. Behind her, the parking lot was drifted with maple leaves that had not been raked since somebody else's father was alive. Above her head, in bulbs mostly dead and a few stubbornly alive, the sign said, Havlicek Roller Palace. The H flickered. She was not crying. That was the first tell. A woman reopening her dead father's roller rink, 2 weeks after her husband of 38 years took her house, should be crying, and she was not. Her name was Marlene Havlicek Pruitt. She was 61 years old. At her feet sat 2 suitcases. They were not for travel. One held a laptop, 4 small camera housings, a coil of low-voltage cable, and a bag of drywall anchors. The other held a change of clothes, a Bible, a metal box of ledgers, and a cassette player from 1988. In 14 weeks, at a zoning board meeting held in the basement of the county courthouse, 3 men would sit in folding chairs and understand, one at a time, that the woman they had written off in March had not fallen apart. She had gone quiet on purpose. She had gone quiet the way a person goes quiet in the woods when they are listening for a specific animal. And by the time they realized what she had been listening for, it would already be on tape. But to understand the padlock on the roller rink, you have to understand the second cell phone in the tackle box. And to understand that, you have to go back 8 months, to the morning of her 61st birthday, when the deputy knocked on her door with an envelope. The Buick door closes. The neon H flickers once more. Somewhere inside the boarded rink, something moves. Not a person. Not yet named. It was early February, a Saturday morning. Dale Pruitt was on a bass fishing weekend in Erie. Marlene was looking for the battery charger for the smoke alarm. She opened the wrong plastic bin in the garage. Under a tray of rubber worms, she found a flip phone. It was not Dale's phone, which was an iPhone. It was a cheap track phone with a scratched screen. She pressed a button and the screen lit up. There were 92 text messages. 9 of them were to a contact saved only as the letter B. 3 of them were logistical. 6 of them were not. She sat on the concrete floor of the garage for 1 hour and 40 minutes. She did not confront him when he got home. She did not confront him for 6 weeks. Marlene had kept the books at the Wesley Methodist Church for 29 years. She kept the books at the vet clinic on Route 8 for 11. She kept the books, most of all, in the small green ledger on the top shelf of her closet, where she recorded every household check written since 1987. She did not confront Dale because she had learned from the ledgers that a person who moves too fast against a thief will only lose the thief and never learn what the thief took. She turned 61 on a Tuesday. It was March 14th. There was a store-bought cake from the Giant Eagle Bakery on the counter. It had blue frosting, and her name was misspelled Marlene. At 4:12 in the afternoon, a Butler County deputy she knew from choir stood on her porch. His name was Ray Melnick. He had an expression on his face she had never seen on him before. He handed her an envelope. Dale had filed for divorce. Dale had moved out already, into a corporate rental behind the sheets on Old Plank Road. By Friday, Marlene would learn that Dale had quietly retitled the Chevy dealership stock, refinanced the house against equity she did not know they had, and drained the joint savings down to $817.42. That Friday evening, Marlene drove out to her father's grave at St. Michael the Archangel Cemetery. She sat on the frozen ground and remembered his voice. "You will marry a man who works with his hands, Marlene. That is fine. Just watch what his hands do when they think you are not in the room." Her father, Walter Havlicek, had been dead for 8 years. He had built and run Havlicek Roller Palace from 1974 to 2003. 2 weeks after the papers arrived, Marlene met with a lawyer named Priya Bhatia. The office was in a strip mall in Cranberry Township. Priya reviewed the filings for 40 minutes and looked up. She spoke plainly, "Mrs. Pruitt. Something on this paperwork does not sit right. Your husband has structured the settlement so that everything of yours he can reach flows to him, and he is not fighting you for anything in the middle. That is not the pattern of a man who wants out. That is the pattern of a man clearing land. Marlene asked what Priya meant by clearing land. Priya did not know yet. Priya only said that when a man like this is in a hurry, he is in a hurry for a reason. Find the reason. Marlene was not, by nature, a suspicious woman. Her whole life had been oriented toward believing people. Believing Dale had been the labor of 38 years, and dropping that labor, deciding on the drive home from Priya's office to spend the next months not asking her husband anything, and instead assuming the worst about him. Cost her something she could not get back. She stopped at the Sunoco on Route 19 and bought a cup of coffee she did not drink. She sat in the parking lot for a long time. Somewhere in that parking lot she stopped being a wife, and it was worse than the papers being served, because the papers had been done to her, and this she was doing to herself. Her decision was made before the coffee went cold. Do not fight the divorce loudly. Sign. Take what she could, the one thing Dale did not think to touch, because it had been condemned for 2 decades, was the deed to her father's roller rink on Vine Street. It had come to her when Walter died, and it sat on the county tax rolls as a $14,200 liability. Let Dale think he won. Let Dale relax, then find the reason he was in a hurry. It was late April when Marlene drove to the rink alone for the first time in 6 years. She had the original keys. The interior smelled of mildew and old maple. The rink floor still had the last skate's scuff marks in the varnish. In the manager's office, her father's office, there was a Mosler safe from 1961 that she had never seen opened. She dialed the combination. The heavy door swung open. Inside were 3 ledger books, a coffee can of silver dimes, and a manila envelope with her name on it, in her father's block letter handwriting. It was sealed with masking tape that had gone yellow with age. She did not open it. She put it in her purse and took it home unread. Over the next 3 weeks, in the small kitchen of the rental apartment above the Ukrainian bakery, Marlene drew up a plan on legal pad paper. She signed and dated the bottom of the first page. The plan read, "Move into the rink. Live upstairs. Everyone I know will call this a breakdown. Let them reopen the rink under the original name. Not for money, for eyes. For a public reason to be there every night. Install cameras where cameras belong in a business. Nothing hidden that a code inspector could not see. Listen. Do not ask. Do not accuse. Read the ledgers. All 3, mine, Dad's, and whatever comes in from Dale. Find the reason. When I find it, take it to the state, not to Dale." She covered the mechanics carefully. She went to a Best Buy in Monaco and bought 4 Reolink weatherproof cameras at $89 each. She found a used Dell laptop at a pawn shop for $180. She bought a Zoom H1 recorder and wired it into the DJ booth's public address system, so anything spoken over the rink's own microphone would be captured whether the speaker knew it or not. The dashcam in her Buick was already there. Dale had bought it for her in 2019, after a fender bender. He had forgotten about it. It still ran. The total spend was under $600, paid in cash out of the coffee can dimes, cashed at 3 separate coin shops, so nothing showed on a card. She was standing at the electrical panel of the rink on a Saturday morning in early May. She flipped the main breaker for the first time since 2003. The old fluorescent tubes hummed. Half of them came on. Somewhere in the ceiling, a bird flew out. She had 4 months before the county's fiscal cycle closed. Whatever Dale was in a hurry for, he was in a hurry for that. She meant to be ready first. She placed a $42 classified ad in the Butler Eagle. It read, "Havlicek Roller Palace, reopening under original ownership. Public skate Fridays, 6 to 10 p.m. Sundays, 2 to 5 p.m. Admission $4. Skate rental $2. All are welcome." She also walked into the county tax assessor's office and paid the back taxes on the property with a certified check. This triggered an automatic notice to the parcel's neighbors, including an entity called Ridgeline Holdings, whose registered agent was a post office box in Wilmington. The purpose of the notice was exactly what Priya had taught her. Force Dale to see her, publicly, doing what looked like the sentimental collapse of a discarded woman. Give him something to underestimate. Marlene moved a mattress, a hot plate, her ledgers, and Walter's cassette player into the small apartment above the concession stand. It was 3 rooms, with 1 window, and a bathroom whose sink faucet only produced cold water. She did not bring photographs of Dale. She brought, in a shoebox, the manila envelope from the safe, still sealed. She had waited 3 months to open it. She would tell herself later she was waiting for the right night. What she was actually doing, though she would not admit it, was waiting until she had done enough to deserve to hear what her father had to say. On her second night in the apartment, Marlene heard a scratching in the concession stand storage room. She went down with a flashlight. A brown tabby cat, ancient and enormous, and one-eyed, sat on top of a broken popcorn machine and regarded her with the calm of a landlord. She named him Ozzy because her father had loved Ozzy Nelson and hated Ozzy Osbourne, and it seemed to split the difference. Ozzy was presumed to have lived in the Rink, off mice and rainwater, since the building was boarded up. He had a nick in his ear. He slept on the ledger book. He did not run when strangers entered, because he had decided he owned the place, and it was on them to prove otherwise. She installed the 4 Reolink cameras over the course of a Tuesday. 1 went over each exit, 1 over the Rink floor, 1 at the front counter. All 4 were visible, screwed into the ceiling with white brackets, blinking red lights. Anyone who walked in could see they were being recorded. That was the point. She wired the 4th, the DJ booth microphone, inside the booth itself. This was not to hide it from customers, but to hide it from Dale, who, she was nearly certain, would come. She opened the doors at 6 p.m. on the 2nd Friday of May. 14 people came. 9 of them were children. 3 were mothers she knew from choir. 1 was Ray Melnick, the deputy off duty, who skated 2 laps badly and bought a Sprite and told her he was glad she was doing this. And the 14th, standing in the doorway at 8:47 p.m., was Dale. He did not come in to say hello. He came in to look. He came in the way an inspector comes to look at a building whose foundation he already knows will fail. He leaned on the door jamb, holding a coffee from Sheets. He watched her from across the room, with a smile she used to think was affectionate, and now understood his appraisal. Dale did not speak to Marlene. He spoke to a child. He crouched down to a girl of about 7, who was fumbling with her skate laces, and he helped her tie them. And he glanced up at Marlene once, and smiled, and then he walked out. His total time in the building was 4 minutes and 11 seconds. All of it was captured on camera 3. She went into the DJ booth after closing, pulled the SD card from the 3rd camera, and watched the 4 minutes and 11 seconds 19 times. She wrote in her ledger, in blue ink, "He came to see whether I was really here. Now he knows I am." She remembered her father's voice. "A man who does not say hello to you in your own building, Marlene, is a man who has decided your building is his." The following Monday morning, a certified letter arrived at the Rink from an entity called Ridgeline Holdings LLC. It offered $46,000 for the parcel. That was roughly 3 times its assessed value, and roughly nothing compared to what the parcel would be worth if the whole block were rezoned commercial. The letter was signed by an attorney in Pittsburgh Marlene had never heard of. There was no phone number, only a post office box. Marlene read the letter twice, walked to the front counter, opened the tax records envelope she had been keeping there, and cross-referenced parcel 14B. That was the vacant lot next door, the one that used to be the Sinclair station her father hated. Parcel 14B was sold in November of last year for $28,000 to Ridgeline Holdings LLC. She sat with that for a while. 2 things had happened in November that she now had to think about together. Ridgeline had bought the lot next door, and Dale had gone on a hunting trip to Potter County for a weekend she now remembered he had come back from without a deer, without dirty boots, and without much interest in dinner. She did not have proof of anything. She had a coincidence. She did not act on it. She wrote it down in the green ledger and turned the page. That night, at 2:14 a.m., the motion sensor on camera 1, the back exit, pinged her laptop. She opened the feed. A man in a Carhartt jacket, was standing in the back parking lot, 30 feet from the door, doing nothing. His hands were in his pockets. He was looking up at the neon sign. He stood there for 6 minutes and 40 seconds. Then he walked away, off camera, in the direction of where a truck engine started, and did not come back on any camera. He was not Dale. Marlene did not recognize him yet. She saved the clip to a folder she labeled, in her ledger, Men Who Come to Look. By the end of the summer, the folder would have 31 clips in it. 3 of the men in it she would eventually know by name. 2 of them would be indicted. It was the second week of June when Marlene decided to open the rink one additional night. Wednesday adult skate, 7 to 10 p.m., admission, $6, oldies playlist. She did this not because she wanted adult skate, but because she was trying to increase the density of foot traffic that Dale might feel obligated to appear at. He did not appear, but on the third Wednesday of adult skate, at 8:33 p.m., a woman named Bethany Corrado walked in. She was 34 years old, blonde, wearing a small silver cross necklace, and alone. She rented skates, paid cash, skated 1 lap slowly, and stopped at the front counter to ask Marlene a question about the building's history. "Was this your dad's place, ma'am?" "Yes. It is beautiful." "Really? Are you going to sell it?" Marlene did not answer. She smiled the smile of a woman who has been asked this question and knows what it means. Bethany skated 2 more laps and left. After closing that night, Marlene did something she had never done in her life. She went home to the apartment above, opened the laptop, and watched the camera 3 footage of Bethany in the parking lot. Bethany, from 9:07 p.m. to 9:11 p.m., stood beside a red Kia Sportage and made a phone call. Camera 3 had no audio, but Bethany's face was angled toward the sign, and the sodium light was bright enough, and Marlene watched the phone call 4 times, and slowly, the way a person learns to read a language they did not know they knew, she read Bethany's lips. Bethany said, "She is still here. She does not know." Marlene wrote it down. Then she opened her purse and took out the tackle box flip phone she saved from February, powered it on for the first time in 5 months, and scrolled to the contact saved only as the letter B. She matched the number against a piece of paper she pulled from the front counter that evening. It was Bethany's phone number, which Bethany had left because she had asked to be added to the mailing list for future events. They were the same number. That night, at 1:42 a.m., Marlene finally opened the manila envelope from the safe. 2 items were inside, a 2-page letter and a Maxell UR90 cassette. She read the letter twice before she played the cassette. The first fragment of the letter read, "My Marlene, if you are reading this, it is because I am not there to say it out loud, and because something has gone wrong. I built this rink in 1974, with a $14,000 loan from People's Federal and my brother Emil's back. I built it because your mother said a town without a rink is a town where the kids find worse places to be. I am leaving it to you, and not to Dale, because your husband, whom I have loved and treated like a son, has been looking at this parcel with the wrong kind of eye since 2011. I have watched him ask twice about the deed. I have watched him ask once about the zoning. I do not know what he wants it for, but whatever it is, he wants it enough that he has stopped being casual about it. If you are reading this, be careful, Marlene. Be careful the way your mother was careful, not the way I was." The question was answered. The mistress was not the reason. She was the cover. Then what is Dale actually doing? Marlene did not confront Bethany. She added Bethany to a Wednesday night rotation of people to watch. She wrote in the green ledger, "B is a decoy. Something else is on the parcel." The next morning, walking to the Buick, Marlene noticed that the surveyor's stake in the back lot, the little wooden stake with the orange plastic ribbon, had been moved 11 feet closer to the rink's rear wall. Marlene drove to the courthouse in Butler and asked the county clerk, whom she knew slightly from 20 years of church potlucks, if she could look at the minutes of the zoning subcommittee meetings for the last 3 years. The clerk photocopies them for her at 15 cents a page. Marlene read them, all 240-something pages, over 3 nights in the Rink apartment, while Ozzie slept on her feet. She was looking for the words Vine Street, distribution, rezoning or Parcel 14B. She found Parcel 14B 3 times. All 3 times, the motion was made or seconded by Curtis Nagel. Curtis was Dale's brother-in-law, married to Dale's younger sister Denise since 1994. Curtis was on the zoning subcommittee. Curtis had abstained on every other vote in 3 years. But on any motion that touched Parcel 14B or the surrounding block, Curtis had voted, and voted yes. The March 2nd meeting minutes contained a sentence that anchored everything. The subcommittee received a preliminary inquiry from Ridgeline Holdings LLC concerning the feasibility of consolidated commercial rezoning for the parcels bounded by Vine, 3rd, Sinclair, and 4th Streets, contingent upon private acquisition. No motion at this time. Commissioner Nagel recused. Nagel had recused only on the vote, not on the discussion. Marlene noted this. She sat with the photocopies spread on the concession stand counter, and understood, for the first time, that this was not a divorce. This was a real estate transaction, and the divorce was the first move in it. The target was not just Parcel 14B. The target was her block. The whole block. That night she played the cassette. It began with her father clearing his throat, then saying, "Testing. Testing, this is Walter Havlicek, October 4, 2015. Marlene, if this tape is playing, first thing is I love you. Second thing is I want to tell you what I never told you about your husband." She stopped the tape. She was not ready to hear the second thing yet. She had learned, over the last 2 months, that some information you take in only when you have made room for it. She had not made room. She would. She took the photocopies of the zoning minutes. She took the Ridgeline offer letter and the Parcel 14B sale record. She took the copies of the divorce financials Priya had given her. She took the 3 property tax bills from the block's other 4 parcels, which she ordered from the assessor for $2 apiece. And on a legal pad, in pencil, she began to build a single ledger. The question was answered. Curtis was in it. Who else? And who is Ridgeline really? On the last Friday of June, at 9:52 p.m., during public skate, Curtis Nagel himself walked into the rink for the first time in his life. He walked the length of the concession stand. He examined the popcorn machine, the same popcorn machine Ozzy slept on. He asked Marlene cheerfully whether the building had a basement. She said yes. She did not say that the basement was where she had installed the 5th camera 2 weeks ago. He would find that out at the zoning board hearing in November. It was mid-July when an envelope arrived at the rink addressed to Ridgeline Holdings, LSC, care of D. Pruitt, 418 Vine Street. 418 Vine Street was the rink. Dale, in the divorce paperwork, had listed 418 Vine as one of several properties associated with him, because the deed had briefly, in the mid-2000s, been jointly titled before Walter quit-claimed it back to Marlene alone. Dale had never bothered to update his mailing address for various business filings, because most of them went to a post office box. But somebody at Ridgeline's Delaware registered agent, or at the bank, had used an old address on file. The envelope was from Northwest Savings Bank, Slippery Rock Branch. It was a monthly account statement. Marlene, who had never in her life opened somebody else's mail, stood at the concession counter holding it for 11 minutes. Then she opened it. The statement showed 3 deposits to Ridgeline Holdings' business account in the previous month. $22,500 from Nagel Excavating LLC, June 3rd. $17,900 from Pruitt Contracting, June 11th. $31,200 from an entity called Sinclair Grade and Fill, June 24th. The 3 deposits totaled $71,600. There were no corresponding invoices in the statement, but the memo lines read, respectively, Site Prep Advance, Grading Advance, and Materials Advance. Marlene knew Pruitt Contracting. It was Dale's company. It had held county paving and site prep contracts for 18 years. She knew Nagel Excavating. It was Curtis's. She had never heard of Sinclair Grade and Fill. She wrote it in the ledger and, the next morning, drove to the state's business filings office and looked it up. Sinclair Grade and Fill's registered agent was the same Wilmington post office box as Ridgeline's. The picture, now, was clear enough that she had to sit down at the wheel of the Buick in the state office parking lot for 20 minutes before she could drive home. Ridgeline Holdings was not a buyer. Ridgeline Holdings was a bucket. The three contractors, Dale, Curtis, and a shell they had built themselves, were paying money into Ridgeline as fictitious advances for site work on parcels that had not been rezoned yet, on projects that did not yet exist. Ridgeline was accumulating the down payment for the block acquisition, using money that was, in every real sense, kickbacks from county contracts they controlled. That night, Marlene opened page 2 of the letter from the safe for the first time. The second fragment read, "I want to tell you a thing about money, Marlene. Money that has been moved wrong makes a noise. It hums. Your mother used to say a well-kept ledger sings, a bad-kept ledger hums. Dale is a good man in most rooms, but I have seen his ledger hum. I do not have proof. I only have my ears. Trust yours." Marlene put the letter down. She had proof now. Her father had only had his ears. She called Priya. Priya said, "Do not go to Dale. Do not go to the local police because Curtis has a nephew on the department. Go to the Pennsylvania Attorney General's Public Corruption Unit. But not yet. If you file now, they will bury it in intake. You need one more thing. You need one of them saying on tape what they are doing." Marlene hung up the phone, walked out of the concession stand, and looked up at the ceiling of the Rink, where the DJ booth microphone had been wired into the PA system since May. It had been recording every voice raised in that building for 4 months. It would now, she decided, need to record one more. It was late August when Marlene did the one thing that could not be done accidentally. She invited Dale to the Rink. She wrote him a letter, handwritten, a single page, that said, "Dale, I am losing money. I do not know what I am doing. I would like to sell the building. I am asking you first before I call the Ridgeline people back, because I want to be fair and because I remember you were kind to me for a long time. Come Wednesday after close. 10:30. Bring Curtis if he wants." The letter was calculated to activate his sense of victory and his need for control at the same time. She counted on him bringing Curtis, because Curtis was the one who understood zoning. He brought Curtis. At 10:37 p.m., on the last Wednesday of August, Dale and Curtis let themselves in through the front door. Marlene had left it unlocked. They walked the length of the Rink. Marlene had locked herself in the DJ booth. She had told them, through a note taped to the booth door, that she was upstairs on a phone call with the bank and would be down in 15 minutes. She had left a legal pad on the concession counter, with amounts on it. Her mic was live. Their voices carried. Dale said, "Look at these numbers. She will take 40. She will take 35. Curtis said, "It does not matter what she takes." Ridgeline offers her 46. She signs, "We close in 90 days. The rezoning goes to the full board in January. We have got the whole block sewed up by March," Dale said. "You sure the Sinclair account does not leave prints?" Curtis said, "It is a Delaware shell inside a Delaware shell. It leaves nothing." And Bethany's cousin at the title company backdates the closing to before the divorce, if we need her to. Dale laughed. "Best thing I ever did was marry a woman who could not count." The DJ booth microphone captured all 4 minutes and 19 seconds of it. It captured the name of the shell, the timeline, the accomplice at the title company, the mechanism of the fraud, and the sentence about a woman who could not count, which, of every sentence spoken in that Rink since 1974, was the most incorrect. That night, alone in the apartment, Marlene finally let the cassette play through. Walter's voice spoke the third fragment. "The thing I never told you about your husband, Marlene, is that in the summer of 2011 he came to me and asked whether I would ever sell. I said no. He asked whether, if you inherited, would you sell? I said probably not. He said, and I remember this exactly, he said, well, everybody sells eventually if the right thing happens to them. I did not like the way he said it. I still do not. If he is the reason you are hearing this tape, I want you to know I saw it. I saw it, and I did not do enough. Whatever you do now, whatever you do it slow, and do it on paper. You are your mother's daughter. She would have done it slow, and on paper. The question was answered. The scheme was on tape. Now that she had it, Would she survive using it? 2 days later, walking Ozzy's dinner from the Buick to the front door, Marlene noticed that the padlock on the back exit, the one she checks every night before bed, had been cut cleanly and replaced with an identical-looking padlock. The new lock had a slightly different keyway. She did not do it. Somebody had been inside. She sat in the Buick in the parking lot for a long time. She understood, finally, that the men who had cut the lock had done it not because they knew she was recording them, but because they were preparing the building for something. She did not yet know for what. She would learn in 19 days. You have seen what she has seen. You have the tape she has, the ledger she has, the padlock she found cut. The police in her county are not an option. The Attorney General's office will not act on rumor. If you were her, 61 years old, alone in a building nobody else in the world remembers, with 3 men circling in a locked door that will not stay locked, would you take what you have and run, or would you stay and finish it? Stay for what she does. And if you have made it this far in her story, I would be grateful if you subscribed, quietly, the way she does everything. On a long Sunday in September, Marlene laid out the full picture. She walked the concession counter with photocopies, taping them up, connecting them with red string she bought at Michael's. The scheme was complete, and it was worse than a divorce. Dale and Curtis, through Pruitt Contracting and Nagel Excavating, held roughly $2,400,000 in annual county paving, site prep, and demolition contracts. They had been overbilling those contracts by approximately 8 to 11% since 2019, according to Marlene's reconciliation against public bid documents. The overbilled amount had been routed via Sinclair Grade and Fill, their own Shell and Ridgeline Holdings, their acquisition vehicle, into a fund that, as of the July statement, stood at approximately $412,000. Ridgeline had quietly acquired 3 of the 7 parcels on the Vine Street block over the last 14 months, always at slightly above assessed value, always from elderly owners. The last 4 parcels needed, including 418 Vine, Marlene's Rink, were to be acquired before the January zoning subcommittee meeting. At that meeting, Curtis would, with an appearance of impartiality, recuse from voting, but present a concerned constituent study advocating consolidated commercial rezoning. Once rezoned, Ridgeline would sell the assembled block to an actual regional distribution operator. Marlene, from other zoning subcommittee documents, identified the likely buyer as a mid-Atlantic logistics company that had made preliminary inquiries in 2022. The projected sale price was approximately $6,200,000. The projected profit after buyout of the current owners and the Shell's outlays was approximately $4,100,000, split 3 ways minus expenses. The divorce, therefore, was engineered for one reason: to sever Marlene from any claim on Dale's future proceeds and, crucially, to reset the parcel history so that when the Rink was sold to Ridgeline, it would be sold by a divorced single owner in apparent financial distress and would not raise any of the flags a joint marital transaction might. Bethany was cover in 2 ways. She was the emotional pretext for the divorce, and her cousin at the title company was the mechanism for backdating the closing. He had not left her because he no longer loved her. He had left her because the parcel required it. Now the danger tightened. She did not report the cut padlock. She did report to a locksmith in Zelienople a request for a full lock upgrade. Deadbolts on both exits, keyed differently, new keys held only by her. She had the locksmith come at 6 a.m. on a Sunday when nobody watches Vine Street. She also, that same week, installed a small $99 secondary battery-powered camera she bought at a Home Depot in Cranberry on the exterior wall of the Rink, pointing at the back parking lot. It was not hidden. It had a motion light. She wanted Dale and Curtis to see it. She wanted them to know she was watching the outside of the building, so they would assume she was not watching the inside as closely as she was. The following Tuesday morning, an unfamiliar man in a windbreaker came to the front door and identified himself as an adjuster from the insurance carrier on the property. He wanted to walk through the Rink to update the policy file, which he said was out of date because the property had been reactivated. He showed a business card. Marlene let him in, She could not refuse without arousing suspicion, but she stayed 2 paces behind him, with her phone recording. He asked specific questions. He asked about the electrical panel age. He asked about the sprinkler system, of which there was not one. He asked about combustible materials in the concession stand. He asked about the maple flooring of the rink, whether it had been recently sealed, whether it had been treated. He did not ask about anything a normal adjuster would ask. He did not ask about the roof, the plumbing, or the parking lot lighting. He was asking, Marlene realized as she walked him out, what would burn. That night, she called Priya. Priya said only, photograph everything he touched. Get the visitor log from the insurance company by close of business tomorrow. If he isn't on it, we go to the Attorney General on Monday. He wasn't on it. The insurance company had no record of any adjuster being sent. The recognition beat settled over her quietly. October 10th. The County Zoning Subcommittee was set to hear preliminary discussion on parcel consolidation on November 6. Ridgeline had offered $46,000 with a deadline of October 31st, after which the offer, they had written, will be withdrawn as options in the marketplace change. Marlene understood the deadline. If she had not sold by October 31st, the building's continued existence, in their model, became a liability. And a fire, a maple floor, aged wiring, unoccupied in part fire, would collect on the insurance and clear the parcel simultaneously. She had 21 days. On the night of October 14th, at 3:11 a.m., Camera 1 caught a red pickup truck idling in the back parking lot for 18 minutes. The driver did not get out. The plate was obscured with what appeared to be a strip of black electrical tape. Over the middle, 2 digits. She did not sleep the rest of that night. She sat at the kitchen table with Ozzy on her lap and the laptop open in front of her, and she watched the empty parking lot on Camera 1 until the sun came up. The truck did not come back. She understood, sitting there in the blue light of the screen, that it did not have to come back tonight. It only had to come back one night. Marlene moved. She drew up a second plan, quoted directly, dated October 15th in her own hand. Plan B. Do not wait for October 31st. Move first. Take everything to the Attorney General on Monday, October 18th. In person. Do not mail. Do not email. Carry the evidence in a banker's box. Evidence. The 4 minutes and 19 seconds of Dale and Curtis in the DJ booth recording. The Northwest Savings Statement to Ridgeline. The Zoning Subcommittee minutes with Curtis's votes highlighted. The Parcel 14B sale record. The Reconciliation Ledger showing the overbilled contracts. The Visitor Log, confirming no adjuster was ever sent. The 2 dashcam clips from the Buick, showing Dale's truck at Curtis's house on nights the zoning minutes reference. Ask the AG for one thing. An emergency filing to freeze Ridgeline's assets and to appear before the County Zoning Board on November 6th as a party in interest. Do not go home to the Rink after filing. Stay with Aunt Louise in Beaver until the hearing. Take Ozzy. She followed the plan. She drove to Harrisburg on Monday, October 18th, in the Buick, with the banker's box on the passenger seat and Ozzy in a carrier in the footwell. She met at a state office building with an assistant attorney general named Rena Okoye. Rena was 36 and had been in the public corruption unit for 11 years. Rena spoke to her sparely and professionally. Mrs. Pruitt, I want to be careful here. What you are describing is significant, and what you have brought is unusually well organized for a private complainant. I am going to ask you to do one thing before I take this to my supervisor. I am going to ask you to sit in that chair for the next 4 hours while I make some calls. 4 hours later, Rena had made the calls. The AG's office opened a formal investigation that afternoon. A subpoena was drafted for Northwest Savings by close of business. A preservation order was issued for Ridgeline's Delaware filings by end of week. Marlene drove to Beaver that night. She stayed with her father's older sister, Louise Havlicek, who was 84 years old, in a small house on 5th Street. Louise made her a fried egg sandwich and did not ask questions. Ozzy sat on the kitchen radiator. The November 6th zoning board meeting would be held in the basement of the county courthouse. Curtis Nagel would be there because Curtis Nagel was on the subcommittee. Dale Pruitt would be there because Parcel 14B was on the agenda. Neither of them knew that Rina Okoye and 2 investigators from the AG's Public Corruption Unit would also be there. Neither of them knew that Marlene had requested, and been granted, 3 minutes to address the board as a party in interest. She sat on her aunt's porch on the last night of October, in a coat that had once been her mother's, and she counted the days. 6 days to the hearing. She had spent the last 6 months learning what her father had spent his last years afraid of. In 6 more, she would say it out loud, in a room built to hear such things, and she would let the room decide what it was going to do with it. It was November 6th, a Saturday morning, 9 a.m., the basement hearing room of the Butler County Courthouse. Fluorescent lighting, 12 folding chairs, a dais with 5 subcommittee members, a public gallery of perhaps 18 people. Dale and Curtis arrived together. Curtis took his subcommittee seat. Dale sat in the second row of the gallery with a manila folder on his knee, and a look Marlene had not seen before. Not appraisal now, but the beginning of unease. Because Marlene was already seated in the front row, in her mother's coat, with the banker's box on the floor beside her, and beside her was Rina Okoye. The subcommittee opened. Ridgeline's counsel, the Pittsburgh attorney whose name had been on every letter, presented the preliminary consolidation proposal. Curtis, per script, recused from the vote, but not from the discussion. Then the chair, per protocol, invited parties in interest to speak. Marlene rose. She did not give a speech. She read, from a single sheet of paper, 6 sentences. My name is Marlene Havlicek Pruitt. I am the owner of 418 Vine Street. On August 25th of this year, in that building, I recorded a conversation between my former husband Dale Pruitt and County Subcommittee member Curtis Nagel, in which they described in detail a scheme to acquire this block through a shell corporation called Ridgeline Holdings, funded by kickbacks from Butler County contracts they control. On October 18th, I presented that recording, along with supporting financial records, to the office of the Pennsylvania Attorney General. That office is present today. I asked this board to suspend consideration of the consolidation proposal pending the resolution of that investigation. Thank you. She sat down. The room did not erupt. The subcommittee chair blinked twice. Curtis Nagel at the dais had not moved his hand from where it rested on his water glass in 11 seconds. Dale, in the gallery, was looking at the back of his ex-wife's head. Rina then rose, briefly, and confirmed for the record that an active investigation existed, that a preservation order had been served on Northwest Savings and on the Delaware registered agent for Ridgeline, and that the subcommittee was respectfully asked to defer. The subcommittee deferred. Motion to table, seconded, passed, 4-0 with Nagel abstaining because he could not make his hand let go of the glass. Outside the courthouse, on the steps, Dale caught up with Marlene. He said her name. She said, You couldn't have just talked to me. She looked at him. She said, I did. In February, in the garage. You weren't home. She walked to the Buick. She did not look back. Rina walked with her. That night, Marlene drove back to the rink for the first time in 19 days. She unlocked the front door with the new deadbolt key. Ozzy, whom she had brought back from Beaver in his carrier, walked out of the carrier and onto the popcorn machine as if he has been gone 12 minutes and not 12 weeks. The neon H is still flickering. The maple floor is untouched. Nothing burned. She sits down at the concession counter. She opens the cassette player from 1988. She lets the tape play through. She has not yet heard Side B. Side B, Walter's voice, quiet, near the microphone. Marlene, one last thing. I built this place to give kids somewhere to go on a Friday. That was the reason on paper. The reason underneath was your mother. She used to come here on the nights I closed up alone, and she would skate one lap in her nurse's shoes. No skates, just her white shoes. And she would tell me about the babies she had held that day at the hospital. She said a rink was the opposite of a hospital. A hospital is where people come when the world has broken them. A rink is where people come to move around a circle for no reason, except that moving around a circle in a room full of light is one of the good things a person gets to do. I have wanted to leave you a lot of things. In the end, I could only leave you the rink and the ledger and the noise the money makes when it hums. If those 3 things are enough to keep you, they were the right 3 things. I love you, Marlene. I loved your mother. I love this building. Take care of it. She sits at the counter a long time. The tape hisses out. Ozzy sleeps. She speaks aloud to nobody in the empty rink. I will, Dad. The fates compressed quickly after that. Dale Pruitt was indicted in February on charges of wire fraud and honest services fraud related to the county contracts. He pleaded to reduce charges in September and received 18 months in a federal minimum security facility in West Virginia. He signed, as part of the plea, a quitclaim returning any residual interest he may have asserted in 418 Vine Street. He did not contest the divorce revisions Priya filed on Marlene's behalf. Curtis Nagel was indicted the same month on the same charges, plus honest services fraud specific to his subcommittee position. He fought and lost. He was sentenced to 32 months. Ridgeline Holdings was dissolved by court order. Its assets, roughly $412,000, were held in receivership and eventually applied to civil penalties and to a small restitution fund distributed among the elderly Vine Street property owners who had sold to it at below market prices. Bethany Corrado was not charged. She had been used, and the AG's office decides prosecutorially that she was. Her cousin at the title company was fired. Bethany moved to Ohio. Marlene never saw her again. But Marlene extended one line of mercy. She had Priya send Bethany a single sentence in an envelope. You were not the reason. I hope you find better people. MHP. No answer ever came. That was fine. The proposed distribution warehouse never came. The block remained residential mixed. The rink stayed. The rink reopened for real in December. Fridays 6 to 10, Sundays 2 to 5. Wednesday adult skate was discontinued because Marlene no longer needed the pretext. Admission stayed $4. Skate rental stayed $2. She hired 2 teenagers from the vocational school on Route 68. A girl named Jasmine, who runs the concession stand, and a boy named Petey, who runs the DJ booth. They were paid $12 an hour. Off the books, she kept in the green ledger. On the books, she reported to the state. She institutes one policy her father did not have. Sunday afternoons, 2 to 3 p.m., are free for kids in foster care in Butler and Beaver counties. She worked out the logistics through a caseworker at the County Children and Youth Services office. The first Sunday, 3 children came. By March, it was 11. By June, it was 28. She learned their names. She kept a separate ledger, in blue ink, of the names. She sold the house in Prospect that Dale had refinanced. The proceeds, after the mortgage payoff, came to $61,300. She put $40,000 back into the rink. A new sound system, a resealed maple floor, a proper sprinkler because the near miss with the fake adjuster taught her what a building without one looks like from the outside. She put $20,000 in a savings account at the same Northwest Savings branch that had once mailed her the statement, in the same lobby where the manager, who had heard the story, came out of his office to shake her hand. She kept the apartment above the concession stand. The bathroom sink still runs only cold. She likes it that way. It reminds her what she chose. Ozzy sleeps on the mattress. Ozzy, per the vet on Route 8, is estimated at 15 years old now and unlikely to see another winter. She feeds him salmon from a can. The vet, who is one of Marlene's old bookkeeping clients, sighs and says he understands. She sees Priya twice a year for dinner. She sees Rena Okoye once, at Rena's request, at a community banquet in Harrisburg where the AG's office is recognized for the Ridgeline prosecution. Marlene sits at a back table and does not go up on stage. She writes, in the green ledger, on the last page of the last book her father ever bought for the rink, a single sentence. Payoff on the ledger. The ledger sings again. She does not remarry. She is not lonely. She is careful, but not the way her father was careful. She is careful the way her mother was. On paper. Slow. On the second Sunday of the following November, 1 year to the day since she had opened the padlock, Marlene Havlicek Pruitt stood in the parking lot of the rink at 5:47 p.m. after the last child of foster care hour had been picked up, and she looked up at the sign her father had bought from a bulb company in Youngstown in the summer of 1974. The H did not flicker. She had replaced the transformer in August. The parking lot had been raked. The leaves were in 3 paper bags at the curb. Somewhere inside the building, Ozzy was asleep on the popcorn machine, and Jasmine was closing out the register, and Petey was cueing the last song of the night, which was, as it had been every Sunday since she had reopened, a song from 1974 called The Locomotion, because it had been the first song her father had ever played on the Rink's first night. She held the padlock in her hand. Not the old one she had thrown away in April. This one was new and brass and closed with a small satisfying click that she had come to love the sound of. She fitted it through the loop on the front door chain. She turned the key. She had opened this building 61 weeks ago to catch a man. She was closing it tonight because a girl of 9 named Kaylee, whose foster mother had picked her up at 4, had asked whether she could come back next Sunday. And Marlene had said yes. She walked to the Buick. She sat in the driver's seat for a moment before turning the key. She thought about her father. She thought about her mother. She did not, tonight, think about Dale. That was new. That would be true tomorrow, too. She started the car. She drove the 2.5 blocks to the diner on 3rd, where Louise was waiting for her, because Louise had moved down from Beaver in June and lived now in the 2nd bedroom of the apartment above the concession stand, and they had dinner together on Sundays. The neon sign behind her did not flicker. The H held.